You're watching World Championship Wreckage! Pro wrestling history the way the fans remember it. Brought to you by Rivet City Radio and the World Championship Wreckage YouTube page. Please don't forget to like and subscribe. And today's episode, the video games of WCW. And I got nothing clever. I'll just let the wrestlers do the talking for me.
Watch you climb in the ring and try out the largest arms in the world. Hollywood style.
You think you're ready for a fatal encounter?
You're a loser.
I think you're gonna wind up with a snap neck.
Woo!
Hey there! Get ready for a wild ride?
This is why they call me the total package.
Hallo, hier ist Alex Wright. Wenn ihr High-Flying Wrestling Action wollt, den Spinning Sidekick, den Top Turnbuckle Dropkick, dann nehmt mich und der Sieg ist euch sicher. Ich verspreche euch.
Hardcore OG brother from 110th Street.
It's gonna be on like neck bone, sucker.
Ooh, yeah!
It only takes one. Hey, monkey boy.
Hey, anytime you feel froggy, man, you better be ready to wrestle.
Am I the only one that missed the Semi being a hidden character in NWO WCW Revenge? I mean, it has to be an unlockable character. Why else would they tease Sting taking on the Semi?
Valid point, Jay.
Very valid point. The intros to WCW Nitro, the only redeemable quality about that game. But we'll get there. We will get there. What's going on, everybody? Welcome to another episode of World Championship Wreckage. As always, I am your friendly neighborhood DadHat wearing wrestling fan, joined by, as always, my buddy, the Will Gray from Box Spots and Chair Shots. And joining us once again, my buddy from the Wrecking Crew podcast, the Americream Dream himself, HuskyRhodes. Will, what's going on, buddy? Husky, thanks for joining us again.
Thanks for having me, boys.
I'm glad my mic is on a stand because I've got it kicked way back and over, and I'm like laid back in my chair now. So
I know.
I'm like, I don't have to host this one. I just get to hang out and talk about wrestling.
And
this
video
is why
games.
I get paid the medium bucks.
Yeah, the medium bucks. Well, folks, kids, you're going to get an education today. And the reason that I was super stoked about getting Husky on is because Husky, Will, and I, we're all around the same age. So, like, these were our childhood. Like, these games were, like, we all have seen them, played them, had them, owned them, went to friends' house, played the ones we didn't had. You know, this was for us. This was not for others. So, perfect.
3 of the games on this list, I spent most of my childhood just wasting away playing these games.
Yeah, some of these I am attempting to get back into my life right now.
Yeah.
So, but let's start off early. I'm going to ask probably throughout every game. I'm going to ask you guys: did you play it? Did you own it? Or do you have any idea what the hell I'm talking about? So, let's start off early first. The Nintendo Entertainment System. They had a game that was strictly called World Championship Wrestling. I've gotten so used to say World Championship Wreckage, so now when I have to say World Championship Wrestling, it throws me so off. I did not own World Championship Wrestling on the NES. I have never played it. I have seen plenty of videos on YouTube and everything. But for both of you, did you have it? Did you own it? Have you played it?
I've seen one copy in the wild. There's a used video game store downtown here called Planet Fun, and they had one like in the box and everything.
Mm-hmm.
Still, it was like $50. It looked like it had never been touched.
That's a crazy good price.
Yeah, it is.
Like, for real. I didn't play this one. NES is 85 when it came out, which is the year that I popped into this world. So I remember playing the NES. To be completely forward, the Super Nintendo is the first video game system. Like, I remember Super Mario Brothers. I remember like Mario 3 and Duck Hunt and all of that shit. But I was like 3, 4, 5 years old. The Super Nintendo, I was like 7 when it came out. So that was when my big video game history, which still makes me old as fuck to think about it, because that was the second Nintendo system.
Right.
But I did not play a ton of NES wrestling games. My NES games were a lot of like Legends of Zelda and Super Mario Brothers.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, for this, I'm going to show a quick clip that Jay has pulled together for us. And honestly, for being for the NES, it's pretty sweet.
Looks like Mike Tyson's Punch Out, kind of.
Yes, it does.
But yeah, that looks exactly like Flair.
That's actually not bad for 30 years old.
Like that looks like Sting.
That
Eddie Gilbert
looked exactly like Hot Stuff Eddie Gilbert too.
And you get, I mean, it looks kind of similar. I mean, Mike Tyson's Punch Out. I mean, you know, just but being side by side instead of being, you know, from the back of.
Yeah, the forward to the back of the ring or whatever.
Yeah,
right.
So, but I mean, it's the NES. So I mean, of course, you have 2 buttons. It's punch and kick. But watching videos, I mean, there was ways to do suplexes and things like that. But not horrible graphics. I mean, it's not. I mean, it's clear who they were. The selection screens were clear. But I mean, video games are in its infancy at this point. There is a story that to this day, my father, my mom, who doesn't care, my father and my sister swear that I'm lying. So just like Will, born in '85. So very young with the NES. I remember having an original NES.
Me too.
I remember sneaking downstairs because we lived in like a split level house. So like all the bedrooms were upstairs. There was like a mid-level, and then we had like this downstairs basement, which we treated as the living room and everything. And it had the TV and the NES. Snuck downstairs, played the first Mario Brothers game from start to finish, beat it. And to this day, my sister and my dad do not believe me. They're like, "You're lying." And I'm like, we didn't, you couldn't save back then, so couldn't prove it. So,
right.
But it's in its infancy and everything. But like, I mean, I love the look of this game. It's got the Road Warriors on it. Like, it's very, we just talked about on our episode where we recorded about, and we've mentioned in other episodes, like WWF versus WCW in terms of like presentation. WWF, bright lights, audience being seen. WCW, dimly lit arenas, wrestling, not sports entertainment. This video game looks like wrestling from the presentation. It's a black background with Hawk and Animal that literally just says World Championship Wrestling. There's no flare, pun intended. There's no bright lights shimmering. It's smoky arena looking.
Wasn't there a WWF game for the NES called like WrestleMania? And I know that sounds really generic, but I'm going to look it up real quick. But it almost looks identical.
Arcade game. There was
the old arcade game. Yeah,
but that was for Super and Genesis.
Yeah, that's right.
So we move past this. And when we get into, we don't have a video for it. There's one video we're going to play, but it says it's the Super Nintendo's WCW game, which was Super Brawl, which of course they used the name from the Super Brawl pay-per-view. But the video that's actually attached to it that Jay found for us is actually Mayhem, even though it says Super Brawl, which is really weird. But of all the ones looking at it and even listening to other YouTubers who talk about like the gameplay, they all talked about how this, of all the WCW games, was the worst. How it had very limited, like the NES that only had 2 buttons had more like it had a better move set than the Super Nintendo. They gave you 4 buttons plus the D-pad plus the 2 at the top for the first time. And it looks super weird because the camera angle is the bottom corner of the turnbuckle. So you're looking down, you're looking here, and the ring goes this way and that way. So you're looking at a triangle instead of a square. So it's super weird, and it's also, we see it just like we saw in the entrance video with Nitro, where we get like that kind of 3D animation, but this time it's actually videos of them talking. when you're doing the selection for the actual wrestler that you want to use, it's a 3D kind of like Sting going woo. It's Flair going woo. No pun intended. Again, it's literally different wrestlers doing different things. Flying Brian, but the selection screen, and I wish I had a video for it. Look it up. They're all moving at the same time. But because this is Super Nintendo and, this is 16-bit games and everything, it literally looks like they have a police pixelation over their face. You can make out who they are, but it's the cheesiest thing in the world. Super Nintendo, Super Brawl. Did you have it? Did you play it? Did you own it?
I remember
played it.
Yeah, I remember playing it. I don't ever remember owning it. I do remember the 3/4 overhead bullshit where it was like the diamond ring versus a square ring. I thought that was weird. The Super Nintendo gets a lot of hate for their graphics. But if you look at the gameplay style of the Super Nintendo, they relied so much more on gameplay from game to game than any other system. They knew that their system wasn't going to be able to push graphically the same way the Genesis did. And what they did was they incorporated gameplay into their games. And this one's not the best example of it. But when you look into some of the games, like even their platformers, they elevated their platformers by adding different layers of the game to it with the Super Nintendo. This was not a good utilization of what the Super Nintendo could do.
Yeah. It was a good follow-up. I mean,
I flying Brian Pillman on it. You can't go wrong with the loose cannon.
That's true. That's true. Of course, this was pre-loose cannon, but I mean,
it's always a loose cannon to me.
Oh no, I love that's the best incarceration of him. So let's move on. We're gonna get the first two. They're good. It is. We're late '80s, early '90s. It's video like. It's weird to talk about it now because of how far advanced video games are. I mean, you literally get video games where it looks like a real freaking person at all points. Like look at some of the 2K games now, and you're like, "Yep, that's Roman Reigns. Yep, that like there's no mistaking. That's Alexa Bliss walking to the ring, and that's Bray Wyatt. Like whoever you want to say, perfect rendering from because we can do the scans, but." It's weird, but back in the day, that's all we had. We didn't know it was going to even advance. Like when Super Nintendo came out, I was like Will 7, right? Came out in 92, I think.
92.
At 7, I wasn't concerning myself or thinking about it's an 8-bit to a 16-bit. It was just another video game console. It has more buttons.
Yep.
Like it's that type of thing. But let's get into the real meat and potatoes here. Let's get into I have a bigger question before we get into this. Were you guys, because it's a big kind of battle for contention here between a lot of video gamers from this time frame. Were you a Sony PlayStation guy? Were you a Nintendo 64 guy?
I had both.
Okay.
Starting out, PlayStation. And that was because when the Nintendo 64 came out, I think it was 98 or 99, when it dropped, it was this huge deal. Like, to be completely honest, my family couldn't afford a $500 system. So I had a used PlayStation. I got a 64 later once the price dropped and stuff. But when they first came out, that's the way, looking at 38-year-old Will now with a PS5, I'm like, I don't have $500 to blow on a PS5. That's why I'm still playing my PS4.
Yeah.
7-year-old Will, my mom didn't have $400 to throw into a Nintendo 64. So I played a used PS1.
Yeah.
So I never had a PlayStation 1.
Really?
I never had a PlayStation 1. My first PlayStation was a PlayStation 2, and I loved the PlayStation 2. Never had a PlayStation 1. I think I played Crash Bandicoot maybe max 3 times in my entire life. Actually, well, okay, let me phrase. Kids, your friendly neighborhood dad hat wearing wrestling fan here talking to you. Back in the day, you would go to Walmart and Target, and you would I'm sorry, I'm talking down to you, and I don't mean to. I kind of do. But you would go to Walmart and Target, and you would go to electronics, and at the cases of electronics was literally a controller and a screen. Now they have them like they have the Switch and stuff like that. But literally, it was a tiny little television, and they had a controller, and you could play the demos of most games.
I love that.
And yeah,
So
like
good.
literally, I mean, parents didn't think about it back then. It was literally, all right, I'm gonna go to electronics. Come, I'll be somewhere in electronics when I get a chance to get that controller. I'll be on that. But that's where I played PlayStation 1. Like, I played demos of everything. So like, which was literally like the first level of everything. And you would always you'd see an update and they'd have new stuff on, new demos on there, and you're like, oh, new stuff. But that was cool, and if you didn't have one, that's how you got to play some of these, at least start of some of these games. But I don't know, I've continued this into my adulthood. I've always been a fan of Nintendo. I grew up as a Mario fan. I'm still a Mario fan. Like, I'm excited about the new Mario Wonder game that's coming out and everything. Like,
can't wait for that game, dude.
Yes,
because it goes back to being a 2D side scroller.
Yep.
Like, how cool is that going to be?
And the last one we had was the one that was on the Wii U, which they put on the Switch, which I love. A Mario game Galaxy was great. Mario Galaxy was great. 64 is great, but like, left to right,
2D
you can make them look 3D.
That's all you need
for Mario. So much to the fact that as I'm getting my 4-year-old into video games, it's Mario. It's Mario. It's Nintendo, because it's easier to play for them.
They're doing the same thing with Sonic too, by the way.
Yeah.
They're releasing a new Sonic that goes back. It looks like straight Sonic the Hedgehog 2.
Nice.
Like, hold down A and you charge up and you go around the big loop-de-loops and shit. Like, back to the core
as
of
it
what Sonic
should
the
be.
Hedgehog is.
It should be.
Love it.
But I definitely had a Nintendo 64. And to me, Nintendo 64 is the best system ever made.
My favorite game of all time is on the 64.
What is it?
Which is?
The Ocarina of Time.
Okay.
Legend of Zelda. But I'm a Zelda guy, though. I've been playing Tears of the Kingdom since midnight the day it came out. Like, that's the only game I've played not named Fortnite. I'm a Zelda guy, like, at the core.
Nice.
But in 64, I don't know. It was different because of the controller. It was with the joystick, which was super sweet. Like, why they even had
different ways. Like, if you wanted to use the D-pad.
I don't know if I've ever used the D-pad on a Nintendo 64 game ever. It was always the controller, the joystick in the center. But it was super cool. So, let's start first with the PlayStation, right? We're going to break down games by PlayStation, then we'll jump over into the good stuff, in my opinion, for the N64. So first, in 1997, we get WCW versus the World, which really, when you look at it, you see graphics. You see it as almost a precursor to what Nintendo 64 had with WCW NWO World Tour. Because it looks very similar. It moves very similar, the move set. But let me pull that up. WCW versus the World. We have a little video here. So, of course, we get some gameplay action, standard start menu. Press the start button, somebody. But look at this roster. Look at the amount of people. But we've come a long way since the
Mike Tyson's Punch Out or whatever.
Yeah, there's tournaments. Look at the angles you get. Like, one of the things that I thought was really cool about that game is look at the ability. You have the ability to move literally anywhere in the ring, sideways, up, down, left, right, like diagonally. Like, it's such a different gameplay. It's not just kick and punch, it's grappling, it's move sets. But it was cool. It had things like the best of 7, exhibition matches, elimination, tournament, double title matches. The only downside to this game, there was no tag team matches. It was all singles. It was all singles. It was weird that what's the best way I can put this? It was weird that it had a knockout option to it. I remember playing the demos of this, and it had a knockout option. The only thing that was kind of cool about the knockout, and we get this later on the N64 ones, like when you knock them out, they attempt to get up, and then their body just gives out, which was like, okay, you almost killed this guy, which was kind of a cool effect. But we also get with WCW versus the World custom championships. You could make your own championships, and look how popular that is. Like to this day, like I will say this is where video gaming kind of passes me at times, because I'm like, let me just play the game. I am not a create a wrestler, create an arena, create a title, do all that. I'm like, let me play the game. Like that's what I want to do. I want to have matches. That's what I want to do. I'm not like, Will's looking at me like, what's wrong with you?
No, I just learned something about this game on the fly. Like while you're sitting here talking, I'm reading about it, because this is one of the ones I remember playing, but I don't remember a lot of.
Yeah.
The fictional wrestlers.
I was literally going to bring this up. I have the Wikipedia up, dude. It's insane.
That are based on real wrestlers.
Yeah. Here's the WCW lineup that they have listed here is Benoit, Dean Malenko, Eddie Guerrero, The Giant, Jeff Jarrett, Hulk Hogan, Lex Luger, Masahiro Chono, Ric Flair, Rick and Scott Steiner, Sting, Steven Regal, and Ultimo Dragon.
Yeah.
But then the fictional characters, they base it off of like Liger, Akira Maeda, Great Muta, Scott Norton, Taka Michinoku, Antonio Inoki, Stan
There's
Hansen.
one that's Ken Shamrock.
Ken Shamrock is in it.
Bruiser Brody.
Bruiser Brody, Terry Funk, Boss Rutan. Like MMA legend Boss
Williams. Like everybody is in here.
Yeah.
I had no idea. Looking back at it, like I did not realize that these people were modeled after other people.
Yeah.
Like
10-year-old,
13-year-old Will, whatever. What year did this come out? 97. So 97. I'm 12. Like I would have had no idea who the hell, like some Antonio Inoki, 12-year-old Will had no idea who Antonio Inoki is. You know, the Turk, which was, I'm reading it, is a character that's Dynamite Kid's body, but with Vader's moveset.
Mm-hmm.
Like that's insane.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That's nuts.
Yeah.
That'd be like giving Dominic Mysterio like Big Show's movesets. You know what I mean?
Seriously, it's fucking wild.
Yeah.
Like, I need to find a way to play this game because one of the characters is Mitsuharu Misawa.
Yeah.
Like I want to play a game now as Misawa.
We're gonna find you a
dude. Find me a fucking PS1 that still works and a copy of this game. You'll never hear from me again.
Open Emu. You have a PC?
Yeah.
There's a app you can download. It's super cool. It's an emulator. It's called Open Emu, and it emulates every system ever imaginable.
Ooh.
And it's free.
All right, ladies and gentlemen, this is the last time we'll see HuskyRhodes probably on the show now.
It's been real, folks.
I will send you the information. It has saved my life video game wise.
There's a dark side though to that. I don't know if it's on what you guys are reading. So there's a character that is supposed to be Road Warrior Hawk.
Yeah. There's one.
The character's name is Overdose.
Wait. Oh shit.
Whoa. When did Hawk die?
2005, early 2000s.
Yeah.
Okay, so this would have been when his troubles had came out, because by this point it had already been made public and apparent as well.
His character name is Overdose,
and we're getting ready for the LOD 2000 and all of that, right?
Yeah.
I think this is about the time when they start. No, I don't know. No, they don't really start the teasing of like Hawk's issues until like the LOD 2000 thing.
Mm-hmm.
Thunderdome, Boss Rutan. Like, what the fuck is Boss Rutan in a video game in 1998?
Like, I didn't even know Boss Rutan had anything to do with pro wrestling. Like, I knew he did like the Pancrase stuff with like Shamrock and fucking Minoru Suzuki and stuff like that.
But back in the day, just like Will said, at the age of 12, you know, who are these? These aren't the people that I know that I see on television. I see in wrestling magazines. Like, okay, I'm going to play as those like 8 to 10 people you read off. Like,
right.
You know, that's all these are just, you know, made up people, which WCW games, as you go through until you get to like I think like the last two, they all have these random extra characters that, you know, are based on other people. One thing I'm going to say about this, about WCW versus the World, and it leads into when we get to N64, again, different time frames, different systems. You know, we talked about like in the 2K series, like there's no mistaking, that's Roman Reigns. That is, coming out, chiseled, abs, everything. Our boys here on the PlayStation at the time and the N64 for at least World Tour, those boys were thick with 2 C's.
Big, blocky gentlemen.
Like seriously.
Look like refrigerators with fucking arms and legs.
Diamond Dallas Page looks like he needs to do some yoga. Like
DDP looks 400 pounds.
Yeah,
in this game.
Like they thick boys. They super thick. Did you get so? It's weird. Like this is that game. Like I said, I played at stores and I played at friends' house because I didn't have a PS1, so I remember it. But it's like a fever dream playing it, right? As we continue with the PlayStation, unfortunately, this is the highlight. This is the highlight because the next 2 we get are very similar for the PlayStation. It's WCW Nitro, which we're in the intro with them doing the promos, and WCW Thunder. Let's take a look. Like I've got one for both. Here's Nitro. Basic, I remember this because they eventually released Nitro to the 64, and I had it, and I remember being like, "This is horrible. It moves weird. It's as fast as they're moving. That's what it feels like when you're playing it, and it just doesn't feel like there's any type of move set. It's super weird." Nitro and Thunder. Did you guys have them? Did you own them? Did you play them?
I remember playing Thunder. I don't ever remember playing Nitro.
I remember having Thunder for my PlayStation and playing a lot of it. And this was the transitional period for me. Like that range where I was like, okay, this sucks. Like Thunder, like not Nitro and Thunder both, neither one of them were super stellar games.
Right.
And I was just not sold on them. And then you start looking at what WWF was putting out at this time with some of their games because you start getting into Attitude and stuff like that. And it's like, okay, like you got to step it up just a little bit.
Just a little bit. Yeah. Yeah. The fun thing, like I said, I had Thunder. I think I had every wrestling game for the 64 when I was younger. Like that was like, I think most of my Nintendo 64 games were like wrestling, GoldenEye, Mario 64, and the one that I always wanted that my mom for some reason refused to ever buy me was the damn snowboarding game. I wanted that snowboarding game. It just looked fun. I played it all the time when I was at the stores. But I remember with Thunder, every time I would go to like a Walmart, it was always like on their clearance rack. Like they just could not sell it. It was just there. I remember seeing it and then being like, well, I can't buy it because I don't have it. I don't have a PlayStation. Which is funny now because like with the PS2 being, backwards compatible, I probably could have bought it. I just didn't know it at the time. But yeah, like the weird thing about the Nitro game and Thunder being kind of like its successor, other than like the finishers, every player had the exact same move set.
Punch, kick, uppercut, suplex.
Like you hit this button and this button, it does, drop kick. You do this button and this button, it's going to do an uppercut. Like it was weird. It matches had time limits. I mean, yeah, you had some bonuses. Like, yeah, you had arenas like the Great American Bash and Halloween Havoc, which were kind of cool. You got single and tag. A plus was like you could hit the select button and it would, if you were in trouble, and it would call out a person from the back to come out and help you for a little bit, like whether they have any affiliation whatsoever. But the weird thing was the unlockable characters in this game. And I remember this. And then when I was doing my research, I remember it's like, oh yeah. Did you all know that if you wanted to, you could have a match between Sting and a T-Rex in this game? Or let's say you want to have a match with Hollywood Hulk Hogan and Frankenstein, or a ghost, or a skeleton, or Santa Claus, or a snowman.
I remember that. I remember one of the games having ridiculous call-ups. I didn't know if it was this one.
It was this one. And it's not just the wrestlers, it's the arenas too. One thing I was when I was looking at my research and looking at old gameplay videos, it was showing you're literally like inside of a beehive. Like there's bees flying all around the ring. So like, and it's a bee-like character. Husky's face says it all. Like I'm gonna find these clips and send them to you.
I need to see this.
It's horrible. It's horrible.
At the same time, you look at what they're doing with Thunder and Nitro, and then you look at WWF Attitude, which I pulled it up to make sure my release date was right. This Attitude released 6 months after Thunder did.
Mhm.
In Attitude, you could create your own character to the point that you picked every move in their move set. If you wanted, Undertaker's punch, but Mankind's DDT, like you could hand pick every move in your move set. So like you look at what Acclaim Sports did with Attitude and you look at what THQ did with Thunder and Nitro, and you're like, holy shit. Like this, that's why I said this was that split, because when Attitude came out, it was like up here compared to everybody else being down here, because Attitude was that first game I feel like that pushed wrestling into the next generation of video games.
Yeah.
Well, one thing with Nitro and Thunder that I was seeing in my research was WCW for PlayStation, who created these two games. You mentioned THQ. It was like, I believe, a sub company of THQ. And the only thing that they had done prior to this, I know y'all had this, it was probably your favorite game, was Bassmaster Pro.
For the Super Nintendo?
No, for the PlayStation.
That's hilarious. That was their intellectual properties before they got added, or before they got Nitro and Thunder?
Yes. Bassmaster Pro.
Bassmaster Pro.
Right?
Hell yeah. I used to play the shit out of this fishing game on Super Nintendo, and I know that seems ridiculous. Like, it doesn't seem like it would be a fun game, but there was something cool about like driving your boat around the lake and like picking out the spots and knowing where you could, like, it was a fucking fishing game, but come on, it was so fun.
Yeah. Hell yeah.
Now let me show Thunder real quick. Thunder does have something kind of monumental in WCW games. So with Thunder, we get the start of some actual real entrance music, entrance videos.
Yeah.
That's cool.
And the first ever cage match option in a WCW game.
Okay.
Really?
So
it
takes a little bit of a while. But yeah, not being a PlayStation guy, like it's again, kind of like Fever Dreams. They were there. I know I played them. I know Nitro, like I said, since I went to 64 later. The weird thing about Nitro is 2 years later, just a few months before WrestleMania 2000 comes out for the 64, this company re-releases Nitro for the PC. Like, why are you trying to beat this dead horse? Like,
nobody was playing PC games in 2000. Computers were trash back then.
Yeah. Yeah. And who else?
You played Doom, and that's it.
Oregon Trail.
Oregon Trail.
Classic. Or hey, just pull up Solitaire or Minesweeper.
Minesweeper, yeah. And
like,
then you got Pinball 3D eventually.
Oh. Only real ones know about Pinball 3D, dude.
Oh man, we're dating ourselves. We're aging ourselves.
I don't give a shit. I should be buff from how hard I'm pushing 40.
Dude, for fucking real.
Oh, just saying that hurts my heart. Oh. All right, so let's get to the actual gems of WCW wrestling games. Some people shit on it. I love it. WCW versus NWO World Tour.
I fucking loved this game so much.
Love it. Like the intro video here. I mean, that's the big show, kids. That is the big show. Paul White, aka the Giant. You guys, we're in the height of NWO. We got Sting, and you can't even see what he's rappelling down on. Kevin Nash and Benoit. Like,
I just realized it's
6.
Oh yeah.
There's DDP. He a thick boy.
The chest on that brother. Good Lord. Looking like Brock Lesnar in 2003.
but it was awesome. I mean, you got exhibition, you got league challenges, tournaments. You had every character had 4 options worth of gear that you could change in between them. Like if you didn't want Hollywood Hogan, cool. You could change it over to red and yellow if you wanted. You didn't want black and white Sting? Sure. Surfer Sting you get. It was, and here's where we start getting to like start of what made it so special. It played like a match. You know, no wrestler starts, you know, you can't just automatically do their finisher. It's you have to earn up to the ability to do that with the spirit meter at the bottom, and you have to get to where you can do the special. But what comes with that, because this is still so new, you know, the finishers are not accurate for this. Like Sting's finisher special, when you reach the, you know, the ability to do it, is a power bomb into a pinning combination. It's not the Scorpion. You can do the Scorpion by literally hitting like this one button. The best finisher, though, I'm sorry, was Ric Flair. It's the getting hit, the Ric Flair fall, like the head first faint fall, begging off the person, standing up and boop, poking him in the eye. That was his special. That was his finish, which was great. But it was cool. There was blood and weapons, and like when I mean blood, it was like it literally looks like somebody, like Freddy Krueger, just went to your face. And they had some cool unlockable characters, including Joe Bruiser, aka Muhammad Ali, in this game.
Yeah, that's right.
Like it was awesome. And it was weird because it finally gave us a game where we had the ability to move outside of the ring. And, you know, if you want to beat a 10 count, you could run and slide into the ring. It was great. And it had a limited roster, but it was the right roster for this first game for the N64. So, World Tour, did you own it? Did you just play it? Tell me about your history with World Tour, people.
I wore a copy of that out.
I played a lot of World Tour. My cousin had it, and I remember playing it at his house. Once again, he had the 64. I had a PlayStation, so I remember going to his place and playing it. I just went down this rabbit hole. Did you know the N64 had an attachment that you could put on it that allowed you to go online?
No.
Called the 64 DD. It was an attachment that plugged into the bottom of it. You could put a disc in it, and it had a whole ass fucking router that you could plug in a phone line and get online with. It wasn't online compatible, but you could browse the internet and shit on your 64.
The internet was a thing at this point. That's the thing. I'm like,
it was released in '99 and it had a lifespan of 2.5 years. So it ran until the end of Q1 in 2001, and they quit making them. But it was like a whole ass attachment that had a floppy drive that you could plug in floppy disks and expand the memory. You could change like the amount of loads you could save and stuff. You could get on the browser. It had an attachment to plug in a keyboard and a mouse.
Whoa.
I didn't fucking realize that was a thing until right now.
Yeah, I never knew that was a thing until you just said that.
They said it was really buggy and it didn't go over really well. That's why they quit after 2 years. But I didn't realize in 1999, Nintendo had started getting online with their video game systems, because that was way before PS2 did it.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
Well, see, I have this weird blind spot in terms of like the internet, because like I swear I was the last person that I knew that had the internet. Like my mom was like, whatever, we don't need it. Like it was just there. I remember being, because she worked at the middle school that I went to. She worked there, and like I would spend most of my afternoons in the library. And the internet was so brand new that websites, I mean, they were, just basic information. Y'all are going to laugh at me about this. I can already hear Will just losing it. You know what I did? I went to WCW.com, and I literally went through the entire roster and printed out the entire, the bio of the wrestler. Like I had a binder of every, like it had a picture and it had their bio. And I remember doing that. But yeah, like
I love that.
Anything that was internet related, I'm like, I don't remember when the internet came around.
I remember when I got to college at the fall of 04.
Same.
That was the first time I had bought a computer with my money that was constantly connected to an Ethernet plug.
Mhm.
That's the first time in my life I remember having internet all the time. That wasn't a dial-up or, hey, Mom, are you on the phone? I want to get online. Like,
Right.
college was the first time in my life that I
Yeah.
had stable internet all the time.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's about the same time frame for me, about like 2004, 2005. Yeah.
So yeah, World Tour, and then we moved from World Tour into what is considered the GOAT of WCW video games, like the absolute best. It is the highest money earned wrestling video game for the Nintendo 64. WCW NWO Revenge. We get this killer, which is, it's so weird. Like, we had this little mini movie before it, which doesn't show the full thing, but I mean, we get full entrances, we get managers, we get pyro. You know, there's options like you get the NWO title if you want it. There's a section where literally it's got every championship title that they have, and you can play and have the champion that you want. I remember Goldberg in here in the spear, and they would do the replay after you speared them. Like you would hear it like 3 times. It'd be like, crazy
look
things.
more like Brandon Lee than it does Sting.
Right.
Dude, I was gonna say in World Tour, Sting looks like Papa 3 from Ghost.
Yeah. AKA the spooky Nickelback.
Spooky Nickelback with a bad singer.
Yeah. But also more crazy things. Like, you could do a battle royal, and you could have from 1 player up to 40, and you could have a battle royal. And like, the weird thing was, and I loved it still, because you never knew who was coming out. It could be one of those random add-on characters, or it could be the major players. When somebody came out, the camera zoomed into the entrance, and you watch them run to the ring. So all the action in the ring stops.
Yeah.
I liked that the roster was really broken down. Like, you had WCW, like it was like WCW 1, WCW 2. Then you had NWO Hollywood, all their members. Wolfpack, all their members. The Flock, all their members.
God, I love the Flock.
Yeah, like it was such a cool way of doing it. And we didn't have a ref in the match, but when you counted it, there's this weird comic book ref that just pops up in the corner, and he's sweating like when you like a near fall. He's just like, oh my gosh, like it was.
It's like in Mortal Kombat when you throw an uppercut and he's like, whoopsie.
Yeah.
It's like the referee just pops in and he counts and then he disappears like he doesn't exist.
Right. And they did so many cool small details, like the specials. We still have the specials with the joystick, but there's different ones for each wrestler. Like, you're not limited to you go up, like they showed Juventud Guerrera. Juventud, if you go up to the top rope, you know, he's going to do like a frog splash. You go up to the top rope of the special, he's going to do a 450. They each had individual different specials that you could do, not just, you know, Sting going into the Scorpion or the Death Drop, like different ones. But they did smaller details, like they made sure that like the big men, like the Giant Nash, their entrances was them going over the top rope. Raven sitting in the corner, like, you know, it's perfect. There's a reason why it's the GOAT. Gentlemen, thoughts on WCW NWO Revenge? And did you own it? Did you have it? Did you play it? Did you burn it out?
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure. Yeah, I'm pretty sure this was the first N64 one that I owned, like that I remember owning. And I remember playing the shit out of it because this is where they start putting out games and they go side by side. Like WWF would put one out, WCW would put one out, and they would be equally as good at this point. It wasn't Nitro and Thunder versus Attitude anymore, because WrestleMania 2000 blew. And then you had Revenge, and you're like, holy shit, like this is way better than WrestleMania 2000.
I thought WrestleMania 2000 came out after.
I will look right now for you.
Because No Mercy
99 and it was WrestleMania 2000 and No Mercy that were side by side. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So we're 1 year off. But we're getting close to that point where WCW, both in ring for 83 weeks, beat WWF. And then finally they put out a game with Mayhem that was holding their own. But we'll get there. I'm sorry. I was wrong. I was in early.
Yeah.
Hey, I love, like, I'm an N64 guy. Like, I like World Tour and Revenge are two of the ones that, like, that's the reason why I want to find a good working condition 64 to have these games again. I did a TikTok like over a year ago where I said, y'all can keep your 2Ks. I would take an N64 and the 64 games over any 2K game, hands down.
Like, that's the one thing I had going with Fight Forever is because it reminds me of the old THQ wrestling games.
It does.
And I haven't played it yet. I'm not being full disclosure. I still haven't felt like I wanted to pay $60.
It's not as much as you think, but there's touches. It's there. So then we get to the last two, and they were both compatible for N64 and PlayStation. I'm not sure about Backstage Assault, but I know at least Mayhem. Let's pull Mayhem up.
God, what a game.
Killer Ad, Goldberg at his peak, Sting, we get full entrances. We get the ability to go backstage for the first time. Full arenas still. To me, what always made it weird was they look so weird.
Mm-hmm.
Like, you get the faces kind of right and everything, but they're like pencil arms. Like, I don't know. It was always a very weird presentation for Mayhem. And, like, I didn't have Mayhem. I didn't have Backstage Assault. I don't even know if I played them. So the weird thing about as we move into Backstage Assault was there was no ring whatsoever. It was all, let's fight in the bathroom, let's fight in the parking lot, let's fight in an office. Like, the best way I can put it for these last two was as they were as bad as late 90s WCW was. That's the best way I can kind of put it.
Not wrong.
Yeah. Did you ever play the Def Jam Fight for New York games?
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
That's listening to you talk about the backstage brawl or whatever it is. Like, that's kind of what it sounds like they wanted it to be a little bit, because Fight for New York was the one where you could get like the rappers, and they like fought, and that was cool. I liked that game. But thinking about it, like the idea, what's the wrestling fed that does it with no rings? You guys don't watch as much indie wrestling.
It's shit. I know what one you're talking about.
It's not the Bloodsport thing that Josh Barnett does, because he just takes the rings and turnbuckles off. This fed doesn't wrestle in a ring at all. They just put pads down and the guys just go out there and beat the shit out of each other. And that's kind of what it reminded me of when you said that, was just like two dudes fighting. Like, it's a Street Fighter game at that point, not necessarily a wrestling game.
Yeah. The one thing about Mayhem I'll give them, you got all 12 pay-per-view arenas plus Nitro and Thunder. You get Heenan and Shivani on commentary.
Nice.
So first kind of for WCW. But that's kind of it. For me, it's the two. It's World Tour and it's Revenge. That's the heyday. That's the peak of WCW.
Mayhem was done by EA. I didn't know that.
Yeah.
Until just now, looking it up. I thought they were all THQ games. It makes sense now looking at Mayhem and seeing the graphics that they tried to pull off, because Electronic Arts was just now really starting to go.
Yeah.
Like, that's
EA
really
Sports getting the game. So I'm going to kind of call this one a little bit short because my newborn is awake again. So we're gonna since we are kind of here at the end, what I'm gonna do is let's go ahead and Husky shout out everything you need to shout out.
Yes, sir. You can find me on the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel doing Icon with the Bionic Silverback Nate Slater. You can also catch me on Pro Wrestling 60 over on Cole TV doing Husky's Hot Takes, even though my stuff is no longer really hot takes. It's just me on some herbal remedies doing some fantasy booking. And other than that, I'm just hanging around doing some music stuff. There'll be some big news coming soon enough that might be pertaining to the World Championship Wreckage YouTube channel. So
Yep.
Stay tuned for that, folks.
Yep. And Will, what's going on with Botch and Share Shots?
I didn't even think about it an hour ago when we were talking. I just had a big thing that happened for me, and I don't gloat very often. But I had my first New Japan interview Tuesday night.
Let's go.
So I've done every major promotion in the world now, with the exception of AAA and CMLL. Like, cool. I put it together, like WWE, AEW, MLW, Impact, GCW, NWA, like all of them. And I got New Japan on Tuesday. So fuck yeah, go check out my interview series. If you want to find me, Linktree at The Will Gray. It'll take you to all my shenanigans, my dirt sheet writing with Last Word on Sports, Sportster, pro wrestling stories, everything botch spots and share shots. Just type it in where you do anything on the internet, botch spots and share shots. You're going to fucking find me. I'm there.
So as always, I am your friendly neighborhood DadHat wearing wrestling fan. You can find me at DadHat Wrestling everywhere. You can find us on Twitter and TikTok, very similar names at WC Wreckage Pod or WC Wreckage Podcast for TikTok. On Instagram and Threads at world_championship_wrestling. We throw out the polls each and every week. We'll get to that for the business. Sorry, Yaz, I just don't want my wife to have to be stuck with the crying baby. So I am going to jump off here quickly. But a lot of cool things coming up. We, as of this recording, we are about 5 or 6 away from hitting 100 subscribers. At 100 subscribers, we are going to have our very first live on the YouTube channel as a celebration, and there will be announcements and our giveaway. For our giveaway, you have to be subscribed, and we will be actually giving away a Ric Flair figure courtesy of Jay Knows Wrestling. All you have to do is be subscribed and comment under any video on our YouTube channel, Ric Flair. But Will, first of all, Husky, thank you as always for being a guest. We love you. You're always welcome. Will, I know what I'm going to do for this poll. What you got?
Ooh.
The life and career of the man of 1,000 holds.
Oh, let's
go in WCW.
It's a good one.
Go.
So mine's also kind of a career retrospective, but it's not just on one man. It's on a faction, but it features more of one man than a faction. We talked about him today. I never got to talk about him on the Wrecking Crew. We're talking about Raven and the Flock.
Oh, you son of a bitch.
Yeah.
I win a couple, and you're like, no, I've been saving this. Has been in your back pocket for weeks.
It has been.
Just let me catch up a little bit, then you throw the fucking Flock out there.
Yeah. I give you hope just to break you down. But, folks, we're going to end this week like we end each and every week. Wise words from the American Dream, Dusty Rhodes, and we'll see you next time.
Yeah, baby, I got one more thing to say. Your gas tank is full. Your dipstick is in. Your windows washed. Y'all come back and see me again.
All right, everybody.
Bye.
Bye, guys.